Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, all these smiling faces. So listen, a year ago, I had the honor of joining President Biden and Vice President Harris as President Biden signed the Inflation Reduction Act into law. A year later, we've seen how the law delivers on President Biden's vision, confronting the climate crisis as an opportunity to advance environmental justice, save families money, and create good-paying jobs. Over the last year, EPA has made tremendous progress in developing and implementing programs, including the $27 billion Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. Yes. This is a national financing program designed to bring hundreds of billions of dollars of private capital off the sidelines to address the climate crisis head-on. And we're ensuring that these critical resources reach marginalized communities who need them the most. Of the countless experiences that I've had traveling across the country, one recently captured what the Inflation Reduction Act is all about. I visited Baltimore, Maryland, a city that has for far too long faced untold environmental injustices. Many communities in Baltimore have been unable to access funding in investing in clean solutions. There, Vice President Harris and I met with Crystal Hansley of We Solar, a minority, woman-owned small business. Crystal has been working for years to bring affordable, clean energy to her city. And thanks to the Inflation Reduction Act, Crystal and small business owners all across the country will now have access to low-cost loans to employ people and put cost-saving and pollution-reducing solar projects on the roofs of schools and churches in their communities. Folks, this is what environmental justice in action looks like. The President and the Vice President pledged to build a clean, secure, and equitable future for all of our children. They held together a coalition that focused on labor, climate, business, and environmental justice, and boy, they delivered. And we're just getting started. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to my good friend, the Secretary of Agriculture, Tom Vilsack.
Administrator, thanks very much. Great leader at the EPA. Let me begin today by thanking President Biden and members of Congress for the transformational vision reflected in the Biden-Harris Investing in America effort. With the resources from the Inflation Reduction Act, as well as the American Rescue Plan and bipartisan infrastructure law, we're engaged in an historic effort to create the kind of real economic growth on small and mid-sized family farms and in rural communities that has escaped far too many families and communities. I'm talking about the type of growth that will enable and inspire more young people to stay on the farm or to come back home to the community they love but had to leave. Let me explain how this happens by focusing today on the expanded impact of the Inflation Reduction Act. 1 year ago, when the IRA passed, the expectation was that as investments were made from USDA, the impact would be to strengthen resilience to the climate crisis, protect and enhance our ability to produce food and fiber, strengthen our energy independence, all of which is true, but not nearly the full story. What may not have been fully understood is the impact of the IRA is now having and will continue to have on increasing farm income in new and better ways and in creating better paying manufacturing jobs in rural areas across the country. Let me just give you a few USDA examples. As USDA invests from the IRA nearly $11 billion to support rural co-ops in their transition to cleaner and less expensive electricity, and as USDA provides farmers and ranchers millions of dollars from the IRA to install renewable energy systems on their farms and ranches, a real opportunity arises for those farmers and ranchers to also profitably sell the power they produce but don't use to their co-op, generating a new income source for those farmers and ranchers with the added benefit of generating more low-cost energy for themselves and all co-op customers. As USDA makes a $20 billion investment under the IRA to support climate-smart agriculture, an unprecedented investment in soil and water conservation, the benefits will extend far beyond better soil health and cleaner water, as important as they are. These investments in climate-smart agricultural practices will support the production of climate-smart commodities that have a higher market value than traditional commodities. And by virtue of that, they'll see better prices and better incomes for farmers. As the USDA Forest Service uses resources from the IRA to reduce hazardous fuel buildup through better forest management, our forests will be healthier and more resilient, and the threat of catastrophic wildfires will be reduced. At the same time, some of that woody biomass from forests or waste product from farms can be converted into a variety of new bio-based products like mass timber or sustainable aviation fuel. In fact, the production of sustainable aviation fuel represents a brand new American industry. The development of that industry is also supported by the IRA through the Act's significant production tax credits. The development of new bioproduct industries in rural places will lead to more and better paying manufacturing jobs across rural America. The President often reminds us that opportunity in America ought not to depend on zip code. The historic investments being made in rural America under the IRA underscores his point. Lower cost renewable energy, more productive soils, cleaner water, healthier forests, safer communities, lower carbon aviation fuel and bioproducts, improved farm income, especially for small and mid-sized producers, and more and better paying manufacturing jobs in rural America reflect the more full story of the impact of the IRA for rural America. All of which supports a key pillar of the President's Investing in America agenda, which is designed at its core to strengthen and expand the middle class by building our economy from the middle out and the bottom up, regardless of zip code. And this provides the opportunity for those moms and dads in rural places across America to sit at the coffee table and make a strong and compelling case to their children and grandchildren that rural America is indeed a great place of opportunity to live, to work, and to raise their family. Thank you all for being here today.
Distinguished guests, Leader Chuck Schumer and Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi.
We are not only celebrating the IRA, but we are backing Ukraine.
Good afternoon, everyone. To all of you, thank you. Thank you. This day would not be possible without the outside mobilization of so many great green activists across the country. Your organizations, whether it's environmental groups or labor unions or entrepreneurship, whatever it is, you made this all happen. Thank you. And for this president who signed the Inflation Reduction Act 1 year ago today, this president not only made history, he made progress on one of the most pressing challenges of our time. June Kang from the IBEW, Apprentice, this is what the president's initiative is about. Secretary Vilsack and Administrator Regan spoke so beautifully about various aspects of this legislation. And Scott Stracek will talk, and an entrepreneur will talk about all that. So it reaches across our entire economy. And thank you to the visionary leadership of Leader Chuck Schumer passing this Thank you, Mr. Leader. and of course the unity of the Democrats in the House and in the Senate, and the persistence again of the outside mobilization. It just simply would not have happened with all of you. So give yourselves a hand there. Our inside maneuvering, as I said, can only be as effective as possible without the force of outside mobilization. Together, we have enacted a law that is forging America's healthier, cleaner, fairer future. With the stroke of President Biden's pen today, 1 year ago today, we have achieved a monumental victory for America's families. The President, Mr. President, the Inflation Reduction Act fits comfortably among many landmark laws that bear your signature and your leadership. More on that in a moment. First, though, I want to talk about the IRA. This is such a remarkable accomplishment for our country. At a time when our thoughts and prayers with the people of Maui and so many communities are battling devastating disasters, there's no more urgent task than saving our planet. This is not new to our president. Mr. President, this is your day. This is your day. Nearly 4 decades ago, Mr. President introduced the first climate bill in the Senate. 1986, before I was in Congress. You were already here.
I was already a senior member.
Calling on the administration to research, develop, and implement a coordinated national strategy on global climate. And you have been relentless, Mr. President, ever since. So it's fitting that with the President's leadership and his signature, we delivered $370 billion investment to combat the climate crisis, the biggest climate action in history. And we all want to thank the President for making all the difference in the world with an agenda of diversity, inclusion, innovation, and justice, always for the children. As we all know, the climate crisis is a health issue. Clean air, clean water for our children, an economic issue, good paying jobs and ensuring America's preeminence in the clean energy future, a global security issue to prevent conflict springing from competition for resources and habitat, springing from disasters and migration that follows all of that. A moral issue, if you believe as I do that this planet is God's creation, we have a moral responsibility to be good stewards of it. But even if you don't, we can all agree we have a moral obligation to ensure strong, healthy, resilient communities for future generations. I think that's an applause line. At a time, again, in our country is facing so many challenges and uncertainties, right now our families are feeling the Inflation Reduction Act's impact. At long last, Medicare will soon have the power to negotiate for the price of negotiating drugs. Seniors can get life-saving insulin for just $35 a month. As you know, Mr. Leader, you were so instrumental in making this happen. It was $500 or $600 a month before this legislation. Now $35 a month for seniors. And 15 million Americans are saving an average of $800 per year. That's each. A family of 4, around $3,000 on their health insurance through the Affordable Care Act exchanges, which were extended in this legislation. As Speaker then, it was my profound privilege last year to gavel down the historic vote on the Inflation Reduction Act in the House. And it was a thrill to watch from the Speaker's chair there so many House Democrats quite literally jumping for joy. Right, Mr. Meeks? Ms. Moore? Knowing how transformative these initiatives will be for America's families. We're all so proud. I'm going to boast about the House. You'll boast about the Senate.
Okay.
I can encourage you to do that. I know you're shy about it all, but our Select Committee on the Climate Crisis, led by Kathy Castor, was recognized for developing a groundbreaking foundation laying roadmap for climate action. Many of the recommendations now in the law, including clean energy tax credits, were present in that legislation. You know that, Mr. Markey, because you did a similar thing in the earlier Congress. Thank you for your leadership. That's an applause line. We're so proud of the work of Richie Neal and Mike Thompson for having those tax credits in the bill, and Frank Pallone from the Energy and Commerce Committee, see Doris Metzry from that committee as well, and all of theirs, and so many members of our House Democratic Caucus who helped make this law proper. Now let's hear it for the House Democrats. Debbie's on the committee, so someone. I want to tip my hat to Sheldon Whitehouse. Relentless, persistent, just there, whether it's a COP meeting, wherever it happens to be, or just a small little press conference that we might be having. He is always there, and I thank him for his persistent leadership, and so many others in the Senate on this important issue. So here we are, gathered here today, 1 year later. Seems like yesterday, doesn't it, Jeff? Seems like yesterday when you came in with your plot. It's a secret plot. Okay, now let me just put this in this perspective. As I said, this is the president's day. He started in 1986. He has been relentless, persistent, insistent, and the rest to make 1 year ago today happen. But as we celebrate this, we have to celebrate his tremendous leadership to save the planet, because it's about health, it's about jobs, it's about security, it's about our values. But it happens also it's a monumental victory for America's families, and it fits comfortably among many landmark laws that bear the president's signature, but more importantly, his leadership. We propelled America from the depths of the pandemic with the American Rescue Plan. We are rebuilding communities across the country with good-paying union jobs. With a bipartisan infrastructure law. We're caring for our heroic veterans with the PACT Act, which is an environmental issue when you deal with burn pits, but more importantly, dealing with our veterans' health. John Peel, John Stewart, thank you. We're powering decades of discovery and manufacturing with our CHIPS and Science Act, and so much more. Together, working together, the Biden-Harris administration, Senate Democrats, led by the great Chuck Schumer, you'll get a chance to applaud him, but you can do it again. And House Democrats, led by our magnificent new leader, Hakeem Jeffries. Will continue fighting for our agenda, right? And that agenda of growing the middle class, of meeting the kitchen table concerns of working families, and advancing, as the administrator and the secretary said earlier, fairness, inclusion, justice for all. Indeed, under the leadership of you, Mr. President, you'll tell them what I said, right? Thank you for your leadership for a bright future for America. God bless you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President, and God bless America. And now it is my honor If we were at the Capitol, I would have said it's my distinct honor and personal privilege to introduce the great leader of the United States Senate. Aren't we proud of all the work that Chuck Schumer did to make today possible?
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. And I was going to do it, but you preempted me. I said, I have an applause line. Nancy Pelosi. But I have a few more applause lines, too. And I see so many people in the audience here, whether they were from government, whether they were from the staffs of our Senate and House members who worked so hard on this bill, whether they were from labor, whether they were from business, whether they were from the environmental community and so many of the groups that lobbied. I want you to stand up if you helped make this happen, and it should be every one of you. Stand up so Nancy and I can give the greatest applause line of all of you. Because this was such an amazing effort to pass one of the great legislative feats of the 21st century, probably of the 20th too. It was amazing, just utterly amazing how much was done in this piece of legislation. But I can say this, as all of the great things from this bill roll out over the next few years, and over the next decades, frankly, when it comes to the Inflation Reduction Act, as great as it has been, the best is yet to come. I want to thank, Nancy has a whole bunch of colleagues. The only one I see here is Ed Markey. Any other senators hiding there? But I have to give credit to every one of my 50 Senate colleagues. Could you believe it? With the Senate caucus running from Bernie Sanders to Joe Manchin, with only 50 votes, and we needed every single one, and to have to do it under the circumstances which we did, all the rules of reconciliation and all of that, to pass such an amazing piece of legislation is one of the great legislative feats that has ever occurred, and it wouldn't have happened without 50 senators, each of whom, every one of them should be here today, and they're here in spirit, each of whom knew that they weren't going to get everything they wanted, that they had to all pull together as a team. And we were a greater team. I could have said the New York Yankees, but we're a greater team than the Baltimore Orioles are today. But seriously, I'd like you to give an applause to every one of my colleagues who deserve such amazing credit for getting this done. And of course, President Biden, as Nancy well outlined, he envisioned this a long time ago. But let me tell you, as we went through this, month after month, week after week, even hour after hour, the ups and downs were incredible. On some days we thought we were going to get something real done, and on other days we said it won't happen. But there was one sort of beacon who always had that optimism, who always propelled us forward, who always said we can get it done, and he would do whatever it took. And that was the man we will hear from in a few minutes, our great president, who presided over one of the greatest legislative sessions and legislative accomplishments in history, the great President Joseph Robinette Biden. Hear that, Joe? Keep going. And I would like to do special acknowledgement to my own staff, some of whom are here and many of whom are not. I cannot tell you how amazing they were as we went through this, particularly during those 9 days when all of you called me and I said, I can't tell you anything. But the amazing work they did, working really 24/7, constantly, was incredible. A few of them are here, but I would like to acknowledge them because without my wonderful staff, this wouldn't have happened either. So, the IRA, the largest climate investment in U.S. history. And we always had a North Star. Through all the yin and yang, through all the pushes and pulls. One thing I did tell you all when you called me, I had to tell the president too, I couldn't even talk to him, that we would keep our North Star, which was 40% reduction of carbon into the atmosphere by 2030, and we got it done. It was also one of the few pieces of legislation where we said for every dollar we spend, we're going to put $1 away to reduce the deficit. The Republicans talk about it. They just do tax cuts for very well-to-do people and increase the deficit. But we actually did something. And now, in part because of it, inflation has slowed from 8.3% to 3.2%. That's an amazing accomplishment. Over 170,000 clean energy jobs already have been created and announced in state after state, in city after city. Every week there's another announcement of more jobs, good-paying jobs, jobs with a future that have come because of the IRA. 170,000 clean energy jobs already, and there are going to be many, many, many more. Many more. Clean energy investments are so popular. We put $369 billion as the amount that we would put in for tax reductions to encourage wind and solar and clean energy. It's now over $500 billion, and it could go as high as $1 trillion because clean energy is economically sound and politically popular from one end of the country to the other. Close to $1 trillion. And look, having done this we had to do with only Democratic votes. And the contrast, no, I think we have to mention that. The contrast between the parties is glaring, is stark, is instructive. Today, the president is celebrating one of the most significant bills in decades, a bill that lowers costs, creates jobs, makes the very, very wealthy pay some of their fair share. But Republicans can't seem to go 1 week without chaos. It's almost as if chaos is their natural state of being. And the contrast between it all, I hope Americans look at this, is so glaring. The former president and Republicans talked and talked and talked about Infrastructure Week. Every week when Nancy and I went to the White House was a new Infrastructure Week or Infrastructure Month. They got nothing done. It was President Biden and Senate and House Democrats that passed infrastructure. And every week in that regard as well, we're traveling the country, cutting ribbons, breaking new ground, opening bridges and factories, and putting Americans to work. So this is really good news. And we have focused on all of America. In rural America, in small towns, rural communities, this is happening. We didn't write this law just to help blue states or red states. We wrote it to help all the states, everyone, everywhere, and that's just what it's doing. And if you want proof that the Inflation Reduction Act is working and is broadly popular, well, just look around. Republican after Republican is actually showing up at the groundbreakings and taking credit for jobs in solar and EVs and wind, even though they have voted against these bills in Congress. They're coming to the ribbon-cutting ceremonies, aren't they? Because they know it's right. So, Republicans, next time we want to do something more, and we want to do more. We haven't finished yet. There's more to go. Join us not only at the ceremonies, but in voting with us for a clean, green energy bill. So, this is amazing. I've always said, Nancy and I, Hakeem, we've always said we want to work with Republicans side by side to get things done whenever we can. We always try to be bipartisan because we want to benefit this country. We love this country. We want people to understand that we can do good things to make their lives better. And that's how we made this Congress so consequential. So the bottom line is that we welcome bipartisanship. We did many of the other bills, the infrastructure bill, the CHIPS and Science bill, the PACT Act, the gun safety law, bipartisan. We couldn't do it in this one. Unfortunately, too many of our colleagues on the other side of the aisle were in the grip of the oil lobby and Big Pharma. But we're going to fight and fight and fight to make these issues as bipartisan as we can, because America needs them. So, we're going to find more opportunities to keep going in the months ahead. Americans don't want chaos. They don't want extremism. They want better jobs, higher paychecks, lower costs of living. That is just what Democrats accomplished in the Inflation Reduction Act a year ago. And you can bet we're going to keep it going. As I said, when it comes to the IRA, when it comes to all the things we were able to do about growing the middle class with good-paying union jobs, with cutting costs, we've accomplished a lot, but the best is yet to come. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you all for making this happen. This is a great day for our country, for the Congress, and for President Biden, but the best is yet to come.
distinguished guests, the President of the United States, accompanied by Scott Strazik, CEO of GE Vernova.
Everyone, it is a complete honor to be here today. In the last year, the Inflation Reduction Act has been transformative, and I get to see it every day as the CEO of GE Vernova, an energy company focused, purpose-built to electrify and decarbonize the world. At the start, I just want to say very simply and clearly, the Inflation Reduction Act is working to drive action on climate change, energy security, manufacturing jobs, and American competitiveness. At GE Vernova, we are accelerating our investments every day in breakthrough technologies, adding new factories, creating new jobs. And if I just give two quick examples, Schenectady, New York, the founding of General Electric. Exactly. With its size, with its legacy, we've invested $50 million this year, 200 new union jobs to create the first 6-megawatt wind turbine in the U.S. Pensacola, Florida, a place that we rely heavily on our Navy veterans, growing that business, $20 million investment this year to expand our Pensacola, Florida facility. And as exciting as these things are, the best is yet to come. I look at what we have going on in our nuclear business based out of Wilmington, North Carolina. We've added 650 jobs this year to position to deliver a 300-megawatt small modular reactor this decade in North America. The investments to come in our grid facilities in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin to drive the resilience that's needed in the grid, or what I look at the work that we're doing with our researchers for tomorrow's technology in partnership with the DOE with hydrogen and carbon capture, the best is yet to come. When America innovates, the world wins. So on behalf of our GE Vernova employees, on behalf of my 9-year-old daughter, my 11-year-old son, I'm thankful to have here today, and their generation, because that's why we're doing this work. I want to thank the President, thank the leadership team. It's an honor to welcome you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you. Please, thank you. I think your patience today exceeds your good judgment, but thank you. And I want to say one thing to your children. I know some really great ice cream places around here, and Daddy owes you. Okay? So talk to me afterwards. Folks, thanks for the introduction, and Scott, thank you very much. You know, I want to thank Vice President Harris, members of the Cabinet, Secretary Vilsack, Administrator Reagan, you know, members of Congress, particularly Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, who played such a pivotal role in getting this bill done. Everyone was telling us there was no possibility with the divided Congress the way it was, we could get it done. And he got it done without a single vote in the other team, although that began to change at the end. And all the special guests, state and local leaders, business leaders, entrepreneurs, advocates. You know, 1 year ago, with your leadership, I signed the Inflation Reduction Act into law.
and one of the most significant laws I think has ever been enacted. Taking on the special interest and winning, and winning. Delivering on promises that have long been made to the American people to lower costs for families, especially health care costs, increase America's energy security, restore fairness to a tax code, create good-paying jobs here in America, and to address the existential threat of climate crisis. You know, it's part of a much broader vision for our country, growing the economy from the middle out and the bottom up, not the top down. I'm a capitalist. If you can go make $1 billion, go make it. I'm all for that. Just pay your taxes. But because when the middle class does well, all kidding aside, everybody does well. Everybody. The poor have a ladder up, the middle class have a good shot, and the wealthy do very well. The Financial Times and the Wall Street Journal initially called my plan Bidenomics. I'm not sure they meant it in a totally complimentary way at the time. But guess what? It's working. Our economic plan, made possible by all of you in this room, and that's not hyperbole, created more than 13,400,000 jobs, new jobs, since I took office. Nearly 800,000 manufacturing jobs. Where is it written that America can't create the most vibrant and innovative economy and be the world's leading manufacturer again? Where's that written? I didn't see that anywhere. We created more jobs in 2 years than any administration has in a single 4-year term. And I'm very proud. I'm very proud that unemployment has been below 4% for the longest stretch in over 50 years. Below 4% and going down. We now have more jobs than we did before the pandemic. And workers aren't just finding more jobs, they're finding better jobs, higher pay, higher job satisfaction. And unemployment is down, and so is inflation. Remember what the experts told us, okay? And they're traditional economists, very smart women and men. They told us getting inflation under control in order to do, we had to lower wages and increase unemployment. Not a joke. Had to lower wages and increase unemployment. But we never thought the problem was too many people, at least I didn't, too many people that were working, or that working people were making too much money. I thought that was not the best answer to how to get it down. Now, one reason we've seen inflation fall by 2/3 without losing jobs is corporate profits are coming back down to earth. The excesses are being eliminated by the corporations. We have more to do, but inflation is now the lowest point it's been in 2 years. When the Inflation Reduction Act was passed a year ago today, inflation was, as it pointed out by Chuck or Nancy, I can't remember which one, 8.3%. It's now down to 3.2%, the lowest among, and it's going to go lower. But here's the point, it's lowest among the world's leading economies. Take every major economy in the world, we have the lowest inflation rate. At the same time, wages are growing faster than inflation. This matters. The way I think about inflation is the way my dad used to talk about it around the kitchen table. Not a joke. I'm being deadly earnest about this. He'd ask, how much is left after all the monthly bills are paid? How much do you have left over after you pay them all? And is there, at the end of the month, just have a little bit of breathing room? Just a little bit of breathing room. That's one of the reasons why we've worked so hard dealing with farm and other things. Not only to get the overall cost of average people with the monthly bills down, in addition to inflation. The Inflation Reduction Act is giving people more breathing room, as my dad would say, and it's supercharging the economic transition in key ways. First, it's taking the most aggressive action ever on climate energy, ever. I've long said, and that's why I think all the unions have come along, I've long said, when I think climate, not a joke, I think jobs. I think jobs. For real. By the way, none of this would have happened had the unions not stepped up and supported us. The idea. Why wouldn't it? Would not have happened. This law is one of the biggest drivers of jobs and economic growth this country has ever seen. Since I took office, the private sector has announced nearly $240 billion in new clean energy manufacturing investments. That private sector, $240 billion invested. And the law has already created an estimated 170,000 clean energy jobs. In 1 year, it's estimated that that will grow to 1.5 million more jobs over the next decade. First was 1 year, now we're talking about the decade. You know, just don't take it from me. The CEO of U.S. Steel called the Inflation Reduction Act manufacturing, he called it the Manufacturing Renaissance Act, because it's bringing jobs back to America, manufacturing here in America, made in America. According to leading Wall Street firms, Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs, our broader investment in investing in America agenda is unleashing a boom of manufacturing investments. And we're leaving nobody behind. We're investing in all of America, in the heartland and coast to coast. You know, I saw a few of my Democratic friends not in Congress, a friend said, look, you're investing more in red states than in blue states. Well, I made a commitment. This is about all of America. No, I really mean it. We've seen progress across the country from Maine to South Carolina to Minnesota to New Mexico. The Vice President and I and the Cabinet have seen progress across the country. Just yesterday, I was in Wisconsin at a company that makes clean energy equipment, including wind turbines. Because of the Inflation Reduction Act, they expect their market in American-made wind turbine generators to double next year. And by the way, the guy who was the most ardent opponent of all this was talking about what great benefits are coming to Wisconsin. Bless me, Father. I'm going to be a good boy. I'm going to keep the Irish in me down a little bit. At the same time, we're also boosting our nation's energy security. For years, China dominated the clean energy supply chains. We let the American jobs and factories go overseas. For how long have we gone through this period where the answer for the previous, mostly in Republican, some Democratic administrations, the answer had been find the cheapest labor in the world, go close the factory here, build it over there, wherever that is, and then import the product from abroad? Not anymore. We are building it here and sending the product over there. I mean, we're bringing critical supply chains and technologies home for electric vehicle batteries, solar panels, wind turbines, critical minerals. And because of the Chips and Science Act, we've generated $231 billion in private investment in making semiconductors. $231 billion. A small computer chip the size of the end of your fingertip that affects nearly everything in our lives, from cell phones to automobiles to the most sophisticated weapon systems. You know, we invented these chips. We used to produce these chips. We stopped, and we saw during the pandemic we paid a high price for things that when overseas factories shut down, we paid a big price. But now we're bringing semiconductors home. In 2030, the Inflation Reduction Act is projected to help triple wind power and increase solar power by 8-fold. By 2030, electricity deployed through the U.S. power grid is expected to be powered by 81% clean energy. Hear me? 81% clean energy. Imagine the impact on climate and the air we breathe. The law is going to help meet all of my bold climate goals by cutting carbon pollution in half by 2030. In half by 2030. And between the Inflation Reduction Act and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, we're investing more than $50 billion to build up resilience and impacts on climate change. These laws support important priorities, from addressing historic drought along the Colorado River Basin. Remember when I said we had a concern about the Colorado River literally going dry? You all thought I was crazy. I wish I had been, but guess what? I was just out there and looking down in the Grand Canyon, and guess what? It's coming back. But at any rate, we're responding to coastal erosion, sea level rise in the Gulf of Mexico, and helping reduce the effects of extreme heat by investing nearly $1.5 billion to plant trees and expand community parks and forests. Folks, there's a lot more. You've heard a lot today, and I'm going to not go into it all, but this law is helping families save thousands of dollars in energy bills every year through the tax credit and rebates to buy new and efficient electric appliances, weatherize their homes, install heat pumps, rooftop solar. As a consequence of this, it's estimated that the consumer is going to save at least $27 billion in electric bills between now and 2030. We're also offering tax credits up to $7,500 to buy new electric vehicles, and I've worked it out with the European Union. And fuel cells made here in America. For the first time, we can get a tax credit to buy used electric vehicles. And thanks to the law, new electric vehicles are going to save, this is a fact, if we do this, and we're doing it now, tens of billions of gallons of gasoline between now and 2030. That's a lot less pollution. And I'm not even going to start to talk to you about Amtrak. It's going to save billions of dollars, I really mean it, in energy costs. But we'll get into that later now. Let me be clear on this point. When I say climate means jobs, I mean good paying union jobs. And the law will give an added boost to clean energy products that pay prevailing wage, employee registered apprenticeships, and use made in America parts and products, and not violating any international trade agreements. It's all in the law. And we're re-incentivizing companies to build clean energy projects in the same communities that powered our nation with fossil fuels. We owe them, whether it was Scranton, Pennsylvania, or West Virginia, wherever it has been. They've supplied the fossil fuels we needed for generations. For example, next generation batteries are being made in an old steel mill in West Virginia. Solar panels are going to a closed coal plant in New Mexico. These incentives are going to help make clean energy jobs good-paying union jobs and ensure the benefits of clean energy economy reaching communities left behind. And they're left behind. When they left behind, they lost their pride. They lost a sense of who they were. They lost what was going on. To reach communities too often left behind. That's the focus. We're already seeing it happen. Laborers and carpenters building solar farms. Iron workers and operating engineers building wind projects. Electricians installing solar panels and electric vehicle chargers. By the way, 500,000 of those suckers. And it's going to mean a lot. It's a big deal. The clean energy economy should also be a win-win for auto companies and union workers. You know, as the big three automakers and companies, the United Auto Workers, negotiate a new collective bargaining agreement, I'm asking them to work together to forge a fair agreement. Together, we can make this transition to a clean energy future fair and just. And that means ensuring that auto jobs continue to be good jobs so you can support a family. That auto companies honor the right of workers to organize, taking every possible step to avoid painful plant closings, and that when transitions are needed, they are fair and designed to retool, reboot, and rehire in the same factory and communities at a competitive wage while the existing workers get the first shot to fill those jobs. That's only fair. It matters. Second, because the Inflation Reduction Act, we're talking about life-saving steps to reduce health care costs. It locks in place the lower health care premiums for millions of American families under the Affordable Care Act, saving them an average of $800 a year. And I see my friends in the Congress who saw that, in the Senate and House, saw that make that happen. Plus, we pay more for our prescription drugs than any country, major country in the world. The product made here in the United States, sold in Montreal or Paris or anywhere around the world, is cheaper than it's made here where it's been produced. For years, many of us have been trying to give Medicare the power to negotiate lower drug prices, which will reduce, by the way, the federal deficit at the same time. Because when Medicare doesn't have to pay the high price, guess what? It cuts your taxes. It cuts the amount of money the federal government has to pay. For years, Big Pharma won. Big Pharma blocked us. But not this time. I know I don't look it, but I've been around for 400 years. And I've been fighting pharma on this since 1970s. No, not a joke. This time we finally beat Big Pharma. Medicare finally has the power to negotiate low prescription drug prices like the Department of Veterans Affairs has had the power. That's not all. You've heard it's already spoken to. Insulin. Companies pay, it costs, by the way, the guy who invented the insulin, he never patented it because he wanted it available for everybody. It never was patented. And guess what? It costs $10 to make, and if you use everything, including packaging, it could be as high as $12.50. Now those companies are charging 30 times that amount. Now seniors on Medicare, and by the way, it should be beyond seniors on Medicare, but I'll come back to that in another time. We're paying as much as $400 a month for insulin, and they're now just paying $35 a month. We're also capping total out-of-pocket expenses for drugs for seniors in Medicare to $2,200 a year, $2,000 a year for even the expensive cancer drugs that could cost as much as $10,000, $12,000, $14,000 a year. Combine all the costs of their drugs by 2025, they'll never have to pay more than a total of $2,000 after 2025. One in three seniors on Medicare is going to save an average of $400 a year. Seniors with the highest drug costs are going to save an average of $2,500 a year. And the pharma companies are still going to do very, very well. The laws require that drug companies will raise prices faster than inflation. If they do that, they're going to have to pay the difference back to Medicare. That'll create an incentive to keep prices from skyrocketing. And negotiating drug prices alongside other parts of the law will save the federal government $160 billion, reducing the cost of government by $160 billion. It will lower the federal deficit because it means what happens here is Medicare is going to be paying less for the prescription drugs they deliver to the American people. So it not only lowers costs for the person receiving the drug, it lowers the cost for taxpayers. Lowers the cost for taxpayers. And it gets to a third win for the American people with this law. We made all the progress without raising taxes on the middle class. I made a commitment, and some thought it was too much of a commitment, it was too high, that no one making less than $400,000 a year will pay a single penny more in federal taxes. It's a commitment I've kept so far, and as long as I'm president, I will keep it. Unlike the last president, in my first 2 years in office, we actually cut the federal deficit by $1.7 trillion. Hear me? The first 2 years, we cut the debt by $1.7 trillion. And through this law, we're going to continue cutting the deficit and cutting subsidies to big pharma and ensuring wealthy and big corporations begin to pay their fair share of federal taxes. Does anyone here think that the tax system is fair? In 2020, you remember I was a pain in the neck about this, I know. There were 55 of the largest corporations in America paid zero in federal taxes. 55 of the 500, the Fortune 500. And they made $40 billion in profits, didn't pay a penny. Not anymore. The law requires a minimum tax of 15% on our biggest corporations and a 1% excise tax on stock buybacks when they pay profits to shareholders. The law also saves money by cracking down on super wealthy tax cheats, making sure billionaires who pay, by the way, there's about 1,000 now. We used to have 750 before the pandemic. And by the way, if you can be a billionaire, not a problem. I'm a capitalist. I also was listed for 36 years as the poorest man in the Senate, but that's a different issue. But billionaires and the biggest corporations should at least pay their taxes they owe. You know what the average tax of a billionaire in America is today? Federal tax? 8.2%. You know, a janitor pays a higher tax than that. Folks, this law is transformative. And it fell entirely to Democrats to deliver it. I hope we've seen, with all the people out there claiming the credit for it, they've decided that they're gonna join the fight. They're gonna join the fight. I took I guess I shouldn't get into that. But one congressperson who's been particularly strident about me laid out all that we did, and we just took it and used it as an ad. I didn't know. You think I'm kidding? Here's what. The idea that not one single Republican voted for it. You know, and I know my colleagues know this, and I've had 7 of my former Republican colleagues in the Senate come to me and say they agreed with us. And I promised I'd never say their names, and I never will tell anybody. But the reason they did that was they said, Joe, if I vote for X, Y, or Z, they're going to primary and it'll cost me my election. Not a lot of political courage, but an explanation of why there's a lot of people who believe what we're doing is right, but just are a little worried in this environment. In fact, Republicans have repeatedly tried to repeal key parts of the Inflation Reduction Act, including the Speaker of the House now, taking credit for the billions of dollars in private investments and thousands of jobs coming into their states. That's okay. I ran for president and I said I represent all Americans. And like I said in the State of the Union, I'll see you at the groundbreaking. You think I'm kidding? You know I'm not. Let me close with this. I'm not here to declare victory on the economy. Our economy is stronger and better than any industrial nation in the world right now. But we have more work to do. We have a plan that's turning things around. The Inflation Reduction Act is a part of that plan. Bidenomics is just another way of saying restoring the American dream. I believe every American willing to work hard, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart. My dad used to say, Joey, your job's about a lot more than a paycheck. Give him my word. A lot more than a paycheck. It's about your dignity. It's about respect. It's about being able to look your kid in the eye and say, honey, it's going to be okay, and mean it. Any person willing to work hard should be able to get a job, no matter where they live, raise their kids on a good paycheck, and keep their roots where they grew up. How many of you from Midwestern states and border states have found yourself in a position where they provide a good education and the son or daughter comes, Mom, Dad, I got to move. And you were governor of Iowa. How many times did you hear that? You have one of the best education systems in the country. But I got to move, Mom. There's no job for me. Bidenomics is anchored in what's always worked best for the country. Investing in America. Investing in Americans. Because when we invest in ourselves, when we strengthen the middle class, we see stronger economic growth that benefits everybody. Look, folks, I'm proud of the historic law my administration has passed. But it's not about me, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. It's about you. All of you in this room particularly, but the American people. Folks like the ones standing behind me here today. The most important thing I want to say today is thank you, America. Thank you, Americans. We faced some tough times in recent years, but you, the American people, didn't give up. You're the ones getting up every single day going to work. You're the ones taking the risks, opening the doors, hiring workers, fulfilling dreams. And all we hear from our friends on the other side of the aisle is what they claim is what's wrong with America. Well, let me tell you, they're telling us America's failing. They're dead wrong. They're dead wrong. America isn't failing. America's winning. And I've said 1,000 times. I've said 1,000 times. 1,000 times. There is no quit in America. Name me a single objective we've ever set out to accomplish that we've failed on. Name me one in all of our history. Not one. It's never been a good bet to bet against America, and it's still not a good bet today. This is still a country that believes in honesty, decency, and integrity. We're still a country that believes in hard work. We're still a country that believes in each and every one of us is created equal. We've never fully lived up to it. We've never walked away from it. And I guarantee you we're still the beacon for the world. You ought to come with me to all these international meetings. Listen to the rest of the world, what they say to the President of the United States. Everyday ordinary people, every day get up and do extraordinary things. That's who we are. America's best days aren't behind us, they're ahead of us. This isn't about the past, it's about the future we're going to build. And I've never been more optimistic about America's future. Just remember who in God's name we are. We're the United States of America. And there's nothing beyond our capacity when we do it together. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Distinguished guests, please remain in your seats as the President departs the East Room. Thank you.